What's going on, guys? Eric Helms here. We got a good couple questions for our question and answer this month. The first one is about weight loss during contest prep. Specifically, the question is, what kind of weight loss should we expect to have weekly when you start getting below 8% body fat? And how would you determine the needed length of your prep, knowing that you're not going to be losing 1 to 2 pounds per week deep into your prep? For example, if you were 20 pounds above your projected stage weight, it's not as simple as 20 pounds divided by 2 pounds equals 10 weeks. So, great question. We basically want to know what is a good way to gauge the projected length of time it will take you to lose all your weight. And this is another reason why I'm going to plug that we shouldn't be doing these 12 to 16 week diets, and that it probably makes a lot more sense to give yourself more time. This has been proven anecdotally, this has been proven in the scientific research, and this has been the experience of most of the contemporary contest prep coaches like your Ben Escrows, your Lane Nortons, your 3D Muscle Journey, your Dr. Joe Klimczewski. The people who are getting shredded, maintaining the most muscle, and keeping a sane, balanced life are taking a less aggressive long-term diet to get there, normally between 20 to 30 weeks, sometimes longer if you're really out of shape, and less, if you're in great shape. Okay? So, not to go on a tirade about that, I'm going to explain some of the reasons why. So, some good sets of assumptions in this question. The first one is that I'm not going to be losing the same amount when I'm at the beginning of a diet as I am at the end. And there's a good reason for that. So let's talk about that. He kind of had this 1 to 2 pound figure. 1 to 2 pounds per week. Where does that come from? Well, it's a really often quoted figure, but it, honestly, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why we always decided that 1 to 2 pounds per week isn't a reasonable way to weight loss. What I can tell you, though, is that probably what is a better way to go about weight loss is something proportionate. Instead of just saying 1 to 2 pounds per week, like, is 2 pounds per week reasonable if you're a 95-pound female? Maybe not. Okay. Likewise, is 1 pound per week reasonable if you're a 350-pound male who's obese? Well, that's kind of damn slow. Okay. So I think a much better way of looking at rate of weight loss is a percentage-based. Okay. And I often quote 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week is probably a better way of doing this. And why? Take a look at some of the studies out there on weight loss. You can look at Mettler, Wahlberg, Maystew. These are all ones people are losing way faster than that. They've got a calorie deficit, or basically they're taking in 50 to 60% of their habitual calories and losing lean body mass while they're doing weight training. Then you can take a look at studies by Garth and Miro, and you'll find that the folks who are losing at a slower rate compared to the higher rate maintain their performance better and have better outcomes as far as lean body mass and psychometric profiles. So the sweet spot seems to be right around here, 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week. I think percentages are great because it tells you something about where you started. That 95-pound woman, that would mean she'd be losing basically 0.5 to 1 pound per week, right? While our 350-pound male would be losing about 1.75 to 3.5 pounds per week. Okay? So, I get where this is coming from. This is coming from the idea that 500 to 1,000 calorie deficit shouldn't be too difficult. However, if you're a 350-pound male, you're going to be eating a lot of food, so you can probably handle a greater deficit, and you're not going to feel it as much because you basically have a lot of excess calories on your body. Okay? So, I prefer something more of a percentage-based than just an outright rate of weight loss, because typically your body mass will scale proportionately with your caloric intake. All right, so we've got that kind of set in place that maybe 1 to 2 pounds per week is a little too general, although it does work for most competitive bodybuilders, especially naturals, who are going to be starting their diet somewhere between 150 to 200 pounds to 220 pounds, depending on their height. So, it tends to work for most people, but just to really get it precise, I like to see a 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week. Okay? Now, the next part of that question that was really good is saying, hey, I know I'm not going to be losing the same amount when I'm 30 pounds over as I am when I'm 5 or 6 pounds over stage weight. So let's take a realistic example of someone who started at 200 pounds at about 15% body fat, which means they've got 30 pounds of fat mass on their body, 170 pounds of lean body mass. Okay, unless I did my math wrong, which happens all the time in these videos. So, a 1 pound loss of fat for them is 3% of their fat mass. Okay, now let's say 20-something weeks later, they were down to 180 pounds. They had lost predominantly fat mass, but also had lost some lean body mass, which doesn't necessarily mean skeletal muscle. That can mean intestinal atrophy. That can mean loss of all the things that supply fat tissue. Remember, you're going to lose lean body mass, but you don't necessarily lose muscle, although you are probably going to lose some muscle during a prep, unless you're new to weights, if you're a natural bodybuilder. So let's say you're at 180 pounds at 8% body fat. Now you've got about 15 pounds of fat mass on you. Okay? Now that same pound is twice the amount on a percentage by percentage basis. And it gets down to the point where, let's say you're near the very end. This person might need to lose like another, let's say 5 to 6, 7 pounds to get really shredded. So they might be competing right around 170 to 172. Now at this point, they are, like let's say when they're 175, okay, they only have 5 to 3 pounds, let's say 3 to 5 pounds, I'm not backwards, 3 to 5 pounds of fat mass above their essential fat that their body's willing to let go of, right? So can we really expect to drop half to a third of that, if we're going by that 1 to 1.5 pound figure in a week, compared to when we had, 20, 25 pounds above our essential fat mass? Because you're not going to get lower than, say, 3% body fat. Most guys are competing between the 4 to 6% body fat range, because any lower than that is essential body fat stores that your body will not and cannot give up unless you're dying. Okay? So, if you're competing at 4 to 6% body fat, that means that 3 to 5% is probably never going to leave. Your body doesn't see that as a viable fuel source. So can we expect to lose a huge percentage of that in 1 week? Well, probably not. And what typically happens is you start flattening out, losing a lot of glycogen, and also losing a lot of lean body mass when you start to try to lose at that same rate. So I don't like to see 1 to 2 pounds in the final weeks. Ideally, you're eating up at that point. But in the final weeks of your dropping phase, I don't like to see that. Now, what I do like to see is somewhere around 1% of your body weight loss for, say, the first half of the diet. And then as you get closer and closer to stage weight, somewhere around 0.5%. And then as we've actually gotten there, the ideal prep means that we're getting in stage condition, I would say anywhere between 2 to 8 weeks before we step on stage. That way we can start bringing up, basically starting a reverse diet before we get on stage, and just not letting it go to the point where we're actually backsliding in conditioning or gaining fat mass. So essentially we're just filling out glycogen, we're getting our metabolic rate as fast as we can. In the current state we are, we're dropping back cardio, and we're able to increase our carbohydrates so we can do more volume of training in the gym, get that fullness back, and basically come into our show fuller and bigger, but at the same body fat percentage. That's what essentially eating into your show is, okay? So, ideal diet looks something like this. We start and we're being more aggressive, more aggressive, more aggressive, more aggressive, and we're closer to, let's say, 1%, okay? And we're dropping weight, and then we are starting to hit some plateaus, so it slows down, and then we decide, okay, let's really try to strike. As we're plateauing, we come back up, and we're still, we're going to like 0.75%, and then we're down to 0.5%, and I go, well, let's kick it up. Boom, we're back to like 0.9% of body weight per week, and then eventually we're at stage conditioning. And then we start slowing it down, okay? So we start slowing it down, and we're purposely now slowing down the weight loss and eventually barely losing anything, okay? And sometimes we might even start gaining weight because we're trying to fill up into the show. So, to answer the question, how do I gauge how much time I need to diet for a show? Well, first we have to have an accurate idea how much fat mass we have to lose, all right? Which is where most people go wrong in the first place. They think they have 20 pounds to lose, they really have 40. So let's say you do accurately gauge how much fat mass you have left to lose. The way we do this is we have people fill out applications, they send us pictures, and we get an idea of how much they need to lose. All right. So if you do have 30 pounds to drop, that means you probably want roughly this figure for the whole time. Like, let's assume, worst case scenario, we maintained an average of 0.5% of body weight for the whole prep. That would be a good safe figure. So if you're a 200-pound guy with 30 pounds to lose, that means you want 30 weeks to diet. What might actually happen is that you drop 2 pounds early on, and you actually get in stage condition at week 24. You lost 2 pounds for a while, 1.5, then down to 1 pound. We got in stage shape, and then we started eating you up. Okay? That might be what actually happens. Or we find out that, man, you hit a lot of sticks and plateaus, and we need the full 30 weeks to diet. But ideally, we get you ready early, and you start eating up. So I would say use 0.5% of your body weight starting as the number of weeks it will take to get you in shape based on the number of pounds of fat you have on your body. Okay? It's a rough estimate, but most people are going to fall within the range of 20 to 30 weeks. And remember, always err on the side of having more time. Because if you do it right and just bring your calories up and you reduce your deficit as you get closer to the show. If you're shredded early, fantastic. That's the best place you can be. Okay? So, to sum it up, instead of 1 to 2 pounds per week, let's aim for 0.5 to 1%. 1% of body weight per week closer to the beginning of the diet, 0.5% of body weight closer to the tail end. Remember that the leaner you get, the same amount of weight loss is a greater proportion of the total available fat mass you have to lose. So like the question asker specified or pointed out, you can't expect to lose the same amount of fat mass as it becomes a greater percentage towards the end. And trying to get a large amount of weight loss towards the end of a diet is going to result in greater and greater amounts of glycogen loss and muscle loss, which means you're getting flatter and more stringy. So the traditional contest prep model, where you have these different phases, and each one gets more and more restrictive and higher cardio, I don't think is a good one. Ideally, you want to start aggressive and then just keep going aggressive for as long as you can, maybe take a diet break, and then towards that last part, you're going to need to push the person and strike and get kind of past those metabolic plateaus, get shredded, and then as soon as you get shredded, ideally it's early and you start bringing calories up. Okay? So that's the model you want versus the, easy, medium, brutal over a 12-week period. I'd rather see someone go over a 30-week period and go aggressive, back off, come back aggressive, break the plateau, get shredded, and then the last phase is eating up. Okay? Not everybody gets to do it because most people don't give themselves enough time. We're limited by dates, and it's very difficult to guess what kind of plateaus that are going to come up, but that's the ideal situation. All right, guys. Talk to you for the next Q&A in a few minutes when I record it.